Today's episode is with Chet and Misty Snyder. They are the pastors of the Journey Church in Fairfield, Illinois. It is a non-denominational church plant. I guess you'd call it a church plant. It's about 10 years old now. And today's episode is about taking a step of faith, a leap of faith, really. Maybe God is calling you to do something and you don't know what that looks like or how to do it or how to feel, and you're scared or you're nervous or you're trying to figure out how to tell your wife or you're just at a loss because you don't know how to follow this big thing that God might be calling you to do. And that's what this episode's about. And so I hope you guys will check it out. I hope you guys get something out of it, and we'll talk soon. Bye. All right. We are here with Chet Misty Snyder, pastors of the Journey Church in Fairfield, Illinois. Hey, guys, what's up? Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Hey, Hersch, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. Just living in a pandemic.
Yeah.
Just chilling in the pandemic.
You want to go first, dear?
Sure. I'm Misty, and mom of 5, and living in the pandemic. It's going pretty good.
Chet, like Herschel said, last name Snyder. I'm her other half. She's my better half. We're pastors, co-pastors of the Journey in Fairfield, and this is our first pandemic we've been through.
Now, we've been friends for, I was 16 when you came to Fairfield. I just turned 16, so is that 20?
You're a pup.
That's 25 years? 25 years?
May of 97.
Yeah, so 25 years almost.
Yeah, you were just a pup.
Just a little baby. What I wanted to talk to you guys about today is taking a leap of faith, because you guys have done that several times with several different things. But one of the biggest times was when you left to start the Journey. The Journey is a church plant that you guys started. And I kind of wanted to talk about that today, because I know that's something a lot of people go through, is taking that step of faith and when God calls them to do something big. Now, you guys were at the church you were at previously for 14 years?
Correct.
Yeah.
What was it?
We started there a summer job.
A summer
job.
It was
a long summer.
And it became a long summer. Yeah.
And you were the youth pastor, and Misty, you kind of did the same stuff, really. I mean, you just weren't technically on staff, but you were still one of the youth pastors. But what was it that made you guys think that after 14 years, it was time for a change? What were the beginnings of that?
Well, I think God planned it a long time before we caught on. We had a pastor named Kevin Wood, and he had planted a church in Oklahoma before he came to serve as our pastor. And he had always talked about church planting and said, oh my gosh, you and Misty would be great at planting a church one day. And it always just turned my stomach upside down. I'm like, no way. That does not sound anything like I will ever do. You know, you hear people they said, oh, you're going to go be a missionary in Africa. And people are like, I'll never do that. And then the next thing, no, they're a missionary in Africa.
Right.
Well, that was us with church planting. It was me anyway. I don't know about her, but it was not on the radar for me at all.
Yeah. I think it was a little different for me. I think when I think back about it, it was prior to us leaving. It was about 2 years of kind of like a slow fade of kind of disconnecting from what we were doing, and to the point where I just felt like this is not what we're supposed to be doing anymore. You know, I mean, it just like, I don't know. I think God just allowed that to happen to release us from that.
Can you talk about a little bit how that manifested itself, like how that showed up, the disconnection?
So like, I mean, it could, like, this is not going to sound very deep and spiritual, but like used to, chicken wings in the couch from the youth group didn't bother me. And all of a sudden it really bothered me.
Right.
No, I'm kidding, but not.
No, but that's real. That's a real thing.
Yeah, it's a real thing. And two, I think, just different things started to become important to us as far as in our faith, and sharing the gospel with people that were not coming through the doors of a church on Sunday morning. That just through the years became more and more prevalent just naturally in our life. The Monday through Saturday ministry just became so real and prevalent, and we needed to do that in a different way, I think.
Yeah.
I second that. I was really comfortable there, but once I get settled in, I feel like, I mean, I could have stayed forever, but it wouldn't have been what God wanted. Like nothing bad had happened, or nothing that, you know, just this hard sign, hey, Chet Misty, you know, get out of here. It wasn't that way at all. It was, like she said, a couple years of a slow fade. And it was more about what we could do somewhere else, like with people who just, you know, weren't going to church, people who were kind of on the outskirts of church. I coached my son's Little League baseball team one year, and I had two dads who were not in church, and they were standoffish to me right away because they knew I was a youth pastor and I was in church. And, you know, that through that season, they got to see me as one of the other dads and the coach. And I remember when we were done, they both hugged me at the end of that season. And I wanted to invite them to church, but I knew that that setting for them, you know, they were a little rough around the edges. You know, it wasn't for them. And I remember sharing that with our church leadership team at the time, who was great, you know, but I was like, and they agreed with me. They're like, yeah, it's not for everyone, you know. And in a town the size of Fairfield, a lot of us, we're really doing church basically the same.
Yeah.
You know, and what can set, you know, what this church apart that may make these people comfortable with coming to the table together with you. And that's what we've tried to do. Hasn't been perfect. Sometimes that vision has changed a little bit, and I'm not going to lie, sometimes it's been really hard because we thought we would leave town and go someplace else, because that's what you do in small town America.
Right.
Who starts a church in the town you're already in?
So yeah, let's set up that context. Fairfield is 5,000 people, not even that anymore, probably.
Correct.
Right.
And there's 25 churches at least.
Yeah.
And so you guys had been at the church, which is probably the second biggest church in town, for 14 years, and then you leave. You feel like God's calling you to leave. Like, yeah, that's tough. Like, how did that conversation go when you guys? Let's go back to this first conversation where you guys start to talk about it, and you say, Chet, I think it might be time for me to leave my job. What was that like?
Well, it was difficult because, like I said, I could have stayed forever. We had built some tremendous relationships and friendships there. So to start talking about that, God was really, really going to have to intervene. And boy, he did. We had some people that spoke into our lives. Hi there, Sellers.
Hey, Sells.
And we Herschel, you know I have ADHD. Like
I know. He really wanted to bring me a popsicle.
But God was really going to have to make it quite clear and spell it out for me, or it would have never happened. And I just had to be sure that I was sure that I knew this was what was going to happen. And because our kids didn't want to leave. That was all our kids knew. That was home to them. And but we went to a church planning conference and got some great vision, and some people really, really spoke into our lives and shared with us of, you know, doing life just a little bit different in small town America. And can it be done to attract, you know, people who aren't going to church, people who aren't comfortable with just walking through a traditional church. And, to some people, we're not church,
Right.
Because we don't have a piano. When we have a piano, we don't use it often. We don't have a pipe organ. We don't light candles. We don't have pews.
Right.
We meet around the table and chairs. And that can be hard for people to adjust to when you've done something over and over and over and over. It doesn't look like church. But as we know, the people are the church. And it's been successful for our small town. It's a different opportunity than what the other churches offer.
Misty, what about you? What was it like at first for you? This conversation, this idea coming into your head?
Yeah. Well, I think, like I said, because it was like a slow, 2-year process, I feel like as I look back, of course, then I didn't know that. But as I look back, I can kind of see that. And so I think by this 2 years of kind of shedding these layers of attachment to this off, by the time that day came where the words actually came out of our mouths, it was like, yeah. So it wasn't like a sobbing. There were tears, of course, in the goodbyes for the people, but it was so certain.
Yeah.
And I just think we're talking about taking a step out, a leap of faith out. I think when it's a God thing, when it's a kingdom thing, you measure your success differently. Like Chet said, it's been really successful. And so I think a lot of people may be looking from the outside looking in, look at numbers, look at things like that. But I think a lot of times it's like he said, you just know that you know that you know in the steps that you're taking, and just your confidence in what God has placed before you, that it's not necessarily, those things don't need to even add up. I know that sounds crazy, but it was just, there was such certainty by the time we got to that point where we said the words out loud that I'm sure I had days where I was like, what are we doing? But
talk about that. I mean, you kind of talked about your kids a little bit, but what fears did you have going into this, or leaving this very stable job that you had been in, this ministry that you'd been a part of? What fears did you have in leaving that to do something new?
Well, I think for me, there were two major fears. And one is that just obviously human failure side. You see all throughout Scripture where God he just uses the human over and over to get things done, but when it's you, it becomes tremendously scary. You feel like you will let a lot of people down. And then I'm a relationship person, and leaving people you love and them not understanding why, and them, we had done life together for 14 years and had so many, deep ties, and it's hard to understand when God tells you sometimes you got to do this, you're supposed to do this. He's not always telling everybody else that.
Yeah.
And that can be hard and hurtful. And that was scary for me because I loved all those people dearly, and that overall it's been, those two fears never really played out, like most fears do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm trying to think back, but I think for me, the concern for our kids, because at where we had been, there was such a strong children's ministry, and that, like Chet said, that was their home, and so we were starting from scratch, and just I didn't want them to feel lost. So I think they were my biggest concern, because they were pretty broken about it. So they were. So it was a talking through things, and still to this day, still to this day, we talk with them about it, and they talk about it that way, that it was a hard time for them. So
Yeah.
When God calls you to something as a family too, a lot of times, I think sometimes we walk away from it because we don't want to see our kids hurt or our kids uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we try to make them comfortable. But I know, looking back now, we're almost 10 years out now. I look back and see how it's made them stronger people.
Yeah. You said that one of the biggest fears you had, Chet, were the relationships. I know some people supported you guys, some people didn't. How did those reactions surprise you guys?
I mean, honestly, like when we told people that, hey, we're gonna plant a church, a different type of church, most people were thrilled for us. They were very supportive. And then when you start doing the logistics of it and say it's going to be in town,
Mm-hmm.
it may be right down the road, it may be in our home or whatever. Not everyone understood, and I did not expect them to at all. And you had people who, man, I thought they would get us, they would understand, and maybe they didn't as quickly as you'd like. And then you had other people who were just like 100% supportive, and things were never weird. I mean, I'm not gonna say it wasn't tough, and when you have strong friendships and something like that happens, like in a way, it's almost like a divorce. Like that part of the way things were are over. And do we still have relationship? Absolutely. And over time, has that gotten better and better? Right. Oh yeah. But initially, it's just awkward. I don't like to disappoint anyone.
Yeah.
And when you feel like you disappointed people, because then some people at the church left and they came, and then you're like, I did not see that happening.
Right.
Wow, so-and-so and so-and-so, I could have seen. Then this, no way, it just goes through your head. And then you feel, oh my gosh, that's not what we signed up for. That's not what we expected.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say that, well, if we would have really went and planted farther away, then that wouldn't have happened. But looking back 10 years, it happened how it happened for a reason. And
I think a big thing was we sought counsel from people who had done it similar to what we did.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't leave and go far away. They stayed in the area, and so we had really good counsel.
Mm-hmm.
And in those early stages of like telling people that we had been doing ministry with and trying to keep those relationships intact through it all. And so yeah, I think seeking counsel to people who have done similar things is really important.
Yeah. Last question for y'all. Let's just say there is a person listening to this who is feeling that tug at their heart, that maybe it's time for a change and that God is calling them to something new, and they're scared and they don't want to change their life because it is, like you said, it's going to uproot everything. Mm-hmm. What would you say to them from your experience? What would you say to encourage them maybe?
Absolutely, without a doubt, know that it is God doing the tugging and not just you doing the wanting of what you might want yourself, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be trying, and God's got to be in control of that.
Yeah. And I would say usually if things are safe, it's probably not of God. Is what I found most of the time in our life. if things are pretty comfortable and safe, that doesn't sound like God.
Yeah.
You know, usually he is challenging us and is wanting. So I think sometimes the steeper the leap looks, the bigger chance that is God talking to you. And I would say the biggest thing, seek counsel from people that you love and that you trust, and pray. I think sometimes we diminish that, just that prayer and confidence that God gives you just a peace. And peace is different. Like, peace is not comfort. It's tricky. It's a tricky thing to know. Like I said, by 2 years of unrest, and by the time we got to this scary thing, it was like, yes, it was almost like a relief because it had been 2 years of the, I don't know, the unrest. And then when that leap got there, it was like, yes. So I guess sometimes if you're already praying, the thing that you may have to do may be 5 years down the road. If you're already seeking and praying, then when it comes, it's almost like a relief to have somewhere to leap to.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you all for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Hirsch.
Yeah.
You're not a pup anymore. You're a big dog.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all, and we'll talk to you later.
Okay, love you.
All right.